This is a picture of me playing Scrabble with my mom. I'm about 4 or 5. This is me playing checkers with my grandmother. Actually, we played a lot more Rummy Cube and Rummy than checkers, but this is the only photo I have of me and her playing games together. Can't believe I still have this book. This is Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. I think I read this book more than any other book in my life. I actually filled in some of the stuff. I loved it. Obviously, this was at the height of Bobby Fischer's stardom, but it was before his true eccentricities bloomed into full flower. I used to take books about games out of the library all the time. This was one of the books that I used to take out. It had games from around the world. This is where I think this is the book that first I learned about other forms of chess. Japanese chess, and there was Chinese chess. I made my own sets out of cardboard and paper and played them. I just love this book and the idea that people played games around the world. When I was in grade 4, my camp counselor at summer camp introduced me to wargaming, which I had never heard of before, and we played a game called Panzerblitz. Soon after that, I bought this book, Comprehensive Guide to Board Wargaming, which was published in 1977. And at the back of the book pretty well lists every war game that had ever been published, which is kind of funny. The first war game I ever bought on his recommendation, his name was Malcolm Kelly. First war game I ever bought on his recommendation was a game called Blitzkrieg. And then after that, I had to have my own copy of Panzerblitz. I discovered that Avalon Hill were not the only people that made war games and bought this quadra game, as you can see here. Hasn't been dusted in a while, but I would never get rid of this. These quadra games had like a set of standard rules, and then they had separate maps and separate rules for each of the individual battles, and it is still a thing that carries on today. So I was just around 12 years old when I walked into a store, and there was this magazine called Games, and it had a completely blank cover, invisible 3D cover, free special viewing glasses. So, of course, I turned up the page, and it was like, haha, April Fools, and thus began my, I would say, 35-year love affair with Games magazine. It had game reviews in the back. Here in the very first issue, there were these amazing-looking games. Here's a review of Big Boggle, which was a big deal at the time. Soon afterwards, I read about a little game called Magic the Gathering. These other games coming over from Germany, like Die Siedler von Catan. Games magazine was my introduction to all of that. This is a photocopy of the original rules, first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Fell in love with this, although I really spent most of my time designing my own dungeons and levels and things. I loved drawing the maps. Of course, I bought all the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. There I am. I just read these so many times. I loved buying the modules, like here's the infamous Tomb of Horrors module, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, which is where you find like a crashed spaceship. Issue number 9 of Battling Balrogs and Company, which was the magazine of the War Games and History Club of my school, and an article published ever. I did 4. I did one on the rise and fall of the Third Reich, 1776, Hanserlieder, and Ace of Aces. So those were like the 4 war games I basically played to that point. Then, by the time I was in grade 13, I became the editor of the BB&C. My brother did this llama. You know, Monty Python was definitely a huge influence here. This is Odd Lots, a board game I designed for a design competition in 2008, and to my great surprise, it won. This is me in 2012 posing as the winner of the Seven Wonders tournament at Snakes and Lattes. This is the first article I ever wrote for the Daily Worker placement. It came out in 2015 there, you see, January 1st. And it was the first of 285 pieces that I wrote for the Daily Worker placement over the next 9 years. This was a podcast that I guested on in June 2021 with James Naylor, designer and publisher of a great game called Magnate. And finally, The Game Changers, the podcast that I did for roughly a year and a half, starting at the beginning of 2020 through the middle of 2021, looking at the 12 games that really changed the face of modern board games. It still gets listens. It's still available out there if you want to listen to it. As for the current state of my collection, you can see here, these are the shelves in my living room. I've got the table set up for a 6-player game of Eclipse today. Then I have the Nook, more games there. A bunch of games on the floor I'm trying to get rid of. The little ones live in my bedroom. I use some of my kitchen cupboards for some of the games I don't use as much. There's my Catan collection. Some of the war games I still own are up there. So that's a look at what turns out to be about half a century's worth of board gaming in my life. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you in the weeks and months to come here on They're Called Victory Points.